Welcome to How to Be the Difference with your hosts, Johanna and Paul. A podcast for the career you want, or maybe just that push you need. If you want to know what your dream career looks like, join us to get inspiration from industry experts that will make that dream career a reality.
Hello, you are very welcome along. You're listening to How to Be the Difference with your hosts, myself, Paul Ensky, and
Johanna Molina.
Johanna, how are you today?
I'm very well. Last time, Paul, you were complaining a bit about your construction. And today I have people cutting the grass outside my window. So I hope it's not too disturbing, but no way I can go anywhere else.
I know we've been sitting here kind of for about 40 minutes trying to record the intro, but like we're getting there. Like he seems to have taken a break or something. So that's all good. So we've got a super interesting guest today.
We do. And I know you mentioned that a lot of brilliant people that I know are named Catalina. It's just a very popular name in Latin America. What can I do? You don't need to have Catalina as a name to be in this podcast. Let's clarify that.
It's on a list of requirements though. So if your name is Catalina, you will be interviewed for this podcast.
Most likely.
Most likely. Yeah. I make fun of Johanna all the time for the countless amount of Catalinas she knows in her life. I don't know how you keep up with them.
But you know what? Yeah, someone says, hello, nice to meet you, I'm Catalina. And I'm like, oh, I love you. Can we be friends? But I don't know. It's funny, but I do have a lot of amazing friends named Catalina. It's a beautiful name. And we have a lot of team members as well. Some team members, Catalinas.
Absolutely. And yeah, we have got a Catalina on the show today. And this was a super interesting chat about a subject I'm not that familiar with. It was all about genomics and DNA and all of that great stuff. I went and after our chat, which was just recorded a couple of days ago, I went and I checked out a documentary that's on Netflix about the next pandemic. And this was released in late 2019 and then early 2020, boom, we hit a pandemic. It's just on the Explained series, which is very good on Netflix, but it was super interesting getting to ask an actual expert on everything about genomics, about DNA, about research. And it was just great chat, wasn't it, Johanna?
Lovely chat. Lovely chat. And so very educational. And so let's go and listen to our Catalina Lopez.
One of the many Catalinas. This is Catalina Lopez. We're going to jump into it now. But first, if you're listening to us, whatever kind of streaming service, whatever podcast app you're listening to us, please give us a rating and a review. It will help us tremendously.
So today we are with Catalina Lopez Correa. She's the Executive Director of Genomics, or the Canadian COVID Genomics Research, and has worked on the field of research and innovation for more than 20 years in 7 different countries with extensive experience in the academic and private sectors. Catalina is an inspirational leader, a strategic thinker, public speaker, global citizen, and an advocate for equity, diversity, and inclusion. Catalina has worked with different biotech, pharma, and non-for-profit organizations, including her own, ODNS, to help advance research and innovation and develop productive partnerships at the national and international level. She has served as evaluator for large multinational projects funded by the European Commission and has been recognized by several awards at the national and international level. Catalina and I, we both belong to Mujeres TIC, a movement that aims to encourage the participation of women in science and in leadership positions. And Cata, I'm so happy to have you here with us today. Where in the world are you currently?
Well, first, a pleasure to be here, and thank you, Johanna, for the invitation. This is really, I'm thrilled and excited to be here. I am now based in Vancouver, the west coast of Canada, and actually not really in the city of Vancouver, but a little bit outside Vancouver in the middle of the forest.
That's great. Can you please, let's start by telling us a bit more about your journey, your past. How did you become so interested in genomics, and where did that passion come from?
Yes, so I think I would say, when I try to look back, I was a very, 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 and I'm still a very curious person, very curious child. I was always trying to understand nature, how the little animals work, the bees, all kinds of the natural kingdom and animal kingdom and flowers and nature. So very curious about that. And I wanted to initially study biology, but there was this, belief that, well, with biology, you don't have that many career opportunities. Maybe you will end up being well, a university professor. I was not always, very passionate about teaching. So I decided, for some reason, decided to go and study medicine, because I thought, well, medicine has the biological part and also potentially, the clinical application, and it has also the psychology that I also like. So I studied medicine, but I was never really like these kids that want to be a doctor since they are 2 years old. I want to be a doctor. For me, medicine was great as a knowledge, but I, never saw really myself as your typical clinician, medical doctor seeing patients all day. So I did study medicine, and as soon as I finished and did my social work here in Colombia, I left. I had the opportunity really to leave and went to France. That was also a dream from my childhood, to learn French and be in Paris. That was kind of, I wanted to see Paris and I wanted to learn French. And well, I couldn't go to Paris initially. I went to the south, to Nice, because that's where I had the person I knew, the opportunity and all these. And from there, I started step by step. It was not really planned. It's like in life is a matter of, I would say, being prepared, preparing yourself, and catching the opportunities that you get. And that was really my path. I got the opportunity to be in a master's degree in genetics in Paris. Then I finally moved from the south of France to Paris, did the master after lots of challenges, to find a fellowship, to even get the language level, to be able to study, to even get the basic genetic level that, I didn't study genetics in Colombia. So I needed to have some basic genetics to be able to do the master. So all that, day by day is challenge after challenge after challenge after challenge. So finally got my master's after, all those barriers and difficulties. And then from there, I moved to Belgium. I had the opportunity to move to Belgium to do a PhD. I did a PhD in a disease called neurofibromatosis type 1, very much focusing on the molecular aspects and the genetics and all these, but always keeping this mix between the genetics and the medicine, the patients, always relating to the people, the patients. And then from there, I got my first job opportunity when I finished after all these years, medicine, almost 8 years, and then doing the master's and the PhD was almost another 8 years. So I say, well, enough with academia, enough with universities. And I got my first job with a biotech company, American biotech company that was starting operations in the UK, in London. So I moved to London. Well, here you go, to learn again English, because I almost, was focusing on French and Flemish a little bit when I was in Belgium. So I had to revamp again. The language is always a challenge. So getting that up to speed, getting to know another city, another culture, the corporate world, big challenges there. I stayed for about a year and a half. That company was basically acquired by another big company. That was the year 2000. Many companies appear and disappear every day. And that company disappeared and they closed the UK operations. So from there, I got an opportunity, I would say the wildest choice I have ever made. And that was to go to Iceland, to Reykjavik. And my friends in Colombia, there was like can't you find somewhere else more north in the planet? Like you went, from Colombia to Paris to Leuven in Belgium to London, and now you're going to Reykjavik. Maybe your next is going to be Greenland, or where are you going to go next? And well, Reykjavik was an incredible experience, and for, again, many challenges with the language. I study Icelandic a lot. I never, I can understand Icelandic. I can speak few sentences, but it's a very, very, very difficult language. So I always went in English, and people there speak English, so that's easy. The good thing about that experience for me was that ended up that this company where I was, it was called DeCODE Genetics. It was a pioneer, international pioneer in the world of biobanking and really the world of genetics. So that, after working there, that has been a little bit like my passport. Everywhere I go is I work at DeCODE Genetics. I work in this mecca of genetics. And that has opened many, many doors for me after. So I would say that's the payoff of taking a big risk, which is going to a very, different country than what you typically, we go to the US, we go to Europe easily, but going to Reykjavik was a big, a bold, and risky decision that has been paying off very much. And then from there, I moved to the US just because we spent 4 years there, and well, we got like to a point where we say, well, there's not much to move here to another opportunities in Iceland. So we moved to the US with my partner, that's also from Colombia. And I worked in a pharma company there for about 2 years and a half, until we had a challenge with my partner's visa. She couldn't stay in the US because her visa was finishing, and we wanted to look for a place where we could apply together. So long story short, we moved to Canada 2008, and I have been in Canada leading genomics research, initially in Montreal, then in Vancouver, and now living in Vancouver, but working in Ottawa, like the COVID world. Like we live in a place and we work in another one. So that's a little bit the path.
I absolutely love that. And also, you seem to have been in everywhere around Ireland and Europe, living for some time. Excellent. I was just wondering, would you be able to talk to us just a little bit about genetics itself? What is it, and how important is it to medicine, to science, to just the way we are as humans?
Well, of course, I am passionate about genetics. So I would say genetics is the essence of everything. This DNA molecule, this double helix, this code of life that's composed of 4 letters, A, C, G, T, is at the core of every single living organism. You can have a virus, you can have a tree, a human, an animal. All of us have in common this molecule of life, being DNA or RNA, that essence of our, barcode or code of life. And studying that and being now able to read that code, it took us actually almost 20 years to completely read the first human genome. So we have advanced, technology has advanced a lot in these last years to be able to read. We are now also able to use technologies like CRISPR and others that, they call, different technologies to edit the letters of the genome. So one thing is to be able to read, like you read a book. And the second level is to be able to edit that book. Now we're able to edit that, and that's really passionate. That allows us to do lots of things in agriculture, lots of things in even with human diseases, lots of things in areas like forestry, where we can use genetics to select, like, the best trees that will grow in a forest, or the trees that are carbon pumps, all kinds of different applications. And the third step is that now we can also write DNA. Not just that we can read, we can edit, we can also write. And that's, well, I think that's the ultimate possibility with DNA, being able to write, and they're starting now to have some applications with bacteria. In fact, bacteria that can decompose, or that can eat toxins, or that can clean oceans or clean water. So all kinds of different applications with reading, editing, and writing the DNA.
Wow, that's amazing. And we'll move into that deeper in a minute, but just take a step backwards. And I'd love to know, what is it as a career? And what are those steps for people interested in genetics to get involved in it as a career?
Yeah, so again, I initially, I started as a medical doctor and never thought I would go deeply into genetics, but I ended up, that was, the different opportunities led me to one of my passions in medical school, that was genetics. So genetics, there are many different opportunities, like the academic world. So when I was in academics, you can be a teacher, you can be a professor, you can have your academic career, and there is more and more, because genetics and genomics is now being applied in so many different fields. So there are more and more opportunities in this field of genomics to be at a university as a researcher, or as a professor, or as an academic, assistant professor, academic player in the world of genomics. There is also the world of the private sector. As I explained, I could work with biotech companies and pharmaceutical companies that are now using these technologies, not just for human health, not just for human treatments, but also in the agriculture space, or in the forestry space, or even in the mining. In mining, you will think mines, well, this is rocks, this is minerals. How can you use DNA, which is the molecule of life? And actually, they use DNA and they use genomics to do bioremediation, to monitor the waters for contaminants, to use bacteria, as I say, to clean the soil when they do their mineral exploitations. So many companies are now using these new biotechnologies in genomics to advance their innovation projects. And the other field that I joined when I came to Canada, that I wasn't really aware, where I work now, is more the administration, and it's a funding, where I work in a funding organization, an organization that gives money to others to do their research. So I don't do my research myself anymore, but I enable and help others to do the research. And somewhat I'm in a position now where I can guide the directions of where the research is going in a country like Canada. I feel very, very privileged to be able to influence a little bit where things go in terms of priorities and research. So I would say there are many options in terms of career. There are many professional opportunities with genomics, again, from the academic, private sector, non-for-profit, like the one I am now. And there is also all kinds of opportunities to participate, even as a citizen scientist. We have more and more involvement of the population in general that want to contribute with their knowledge. So it's a very interesting and different opportunities that could come out of genomics.
That's absolutely brilliant. And just to move it on a little bit, your current role is really interesting. You're executive director of the Canadian COVID Genomics Research. Is that correct?
Yeah, COVID-19 Genomics Network. Yeah.
Network. Oh, amazing. And
yeah.
Could you talk to us about how this came? Like, how did you get involved in this? And was it, I suppose, when COVID happened, did you just put your hand up and say, I'm jumping straight into this?
Well, yeah, Paul, like life, I say everything is about opportunities and somewhat being ready for those opportunities. And I was in Colombia at the time. I had decided to come back to Colombia to contribute to, work in innovation in Colombia. I was working there, and with the pandemic, we were facing many, many challenges, my partner and I, in terms of the work we were doing and all that. I was already starting to work in COVID, not exactly genomics, but COVID testing when I was at Ruta in Medellin, in Colombia. And I was very much involved in all the innovation and research around COVID. Of course, big challenge always mean also big opportunities in some cases. For me, that big challenge meant a big opportunity, the pandemic. And so I started to look at what was being done in terms of innovation. And I got approached regarding this position to lead the Canadian COVID-19 genomics network that we call CancoGen. So I spoke with the people in Canada, see if they were ready to hire me. Being in Colombia, I was at the time in Medellin. Everybody was working remotely. And so I finally went through all the interview process and they hired me, and I actually worked from Colombia from June when I started that position, June 2020, I'm mixing my years now. Yeah, June 29, 20, what, 2020?
2020, yes. It's like last year.
To December, I'm like, June 2020 to December 2020. And in December 2020, we came back to Canada. And then I have been in Canada since that. But yeah, it has been quite an interesting ride also to work remotely from Colombia, leading a Canadian genomics network, working with all the provinces from Medellin, Colombia.
That's incredible. And I suppose like it's been, I don't want to have too many questions about COVID, but it's been like the overarching theme of the last like 2 years. But what has it taught you as a person, and what have you learned from COVID and what we can improve on?
Yes. So for the work we are doing is really incredible how now not only Canada, but the world has been using tools as genomics to help us identify, understand, and control the variants. In particular, the variant we hear about, the Alpha variant, the Delta, all these variants are appearing, and it's really with genomics. It's really by sequencing the genetic code of the virus that we can identify those variants. So the entire world now, and of course to a different level, countries like the UK, the UK or Canada or the US, they can, of course, they have maybe more funding, they can do more sequencing and more analysis of virus. But countries like Colombia and Latin American countries, African countries are also starting to sequence. So for me, the personal lesson is that, every big challenge brings a big opportunity. For me, it was a big challenge to be in Colombia in the midst of this pandemic, but it was also a great opportunity. From a scientific perspective, I always say that COVID actually took genomics out of the closet or out of the lab, because genomics was still perceived as a technology that is, very much for research. We don't clearly understand how you can apply this technology. And suddenly with COVID, now you hear politicians talking about sequencing and genomic surveillance. You hear Boris Johnson, you hear the G7 actually recommending, you hear Trudeau, you hear the president of Colombia, you hear many politicians and high profile personalities and political personalities and powerful personalities around the world talking about the importance of genomic surveillance and understanding this virus. And the other, I would say, lesson for me is quite, as a scientist and as a person that loves science, is quite amazing to see real time a virus evolving with all the research we're doing. We're seeing these viruses. The little virus started in Wuhan, China, till spread around the world. Now it's creating all these new variants. We're seeing his behavior of these little things that changed the world real time with all our scientific tools. That's unprecedented.
Cata, in your current role running the the Canadian network. You also work with a lot of other networks, companies, organizations, global leaders. Tell us about that. Like, what do you need to have to be successful at your job? What sort of skills? What have you learned? How do you manage all these really high talented people and also influence people from the government, from the private sector, to push everyone rowing in the same direction?
Yeah, that is always a challenge to work with this very, very diverse group of people. I work with, as you say, Johanna, I work with academics, I work with private sector, I work with government, I work with the funding agencies in Canada, and also with international partners, because we align with all the international players. I will say the first, and that's a little bit of the career advice I give to people I mentor. I say, first, get an education and get your solid background. So somewhat to have the credibility, the experience, and the credibility that, have the medical degree, the PhD, the knowledge about the science, and being able to talk about the science. Even though I'm not a scientist, working as a scientist anymore, I understand the science and I can't talk about science. So having that piece. Also, I work always with a lot of mentors and people that I connect very often that help me and guide me. And when I have doubts and I have questions, these people will guide me. I will say that, there is one piece, which is the knowledge and your technical knowledge and your capacity to, your professional experience. But the other piece that is super important too is what we call emotional intelligence. So being able to read people, being able to connect with people, being able to make people feel valuable. So I will just give you an example. Now we're working with the network really is working with many different laboratories across Canada. All these people are, of course, super stressed with this pandemic. They're working day and night doing the analysis of this virus in all the laboratories. They are, there's not enough people to do it. They're stressed, they're tired. It's very difficult for them. And we need them to do more. Every day, I give the money to this. We give through the network lots of money to these labs, but we also ask a lot of things that they need to do. And they're stressed, they're tired, they don't want to do it. The last thing they want is to have one more thing to do when they already have 20 things to do every day. So for me is a matter of also convincing them that by doing whatever I need them to do, there is also a win for them. So what is the win for you? It's not just about me, it's about you, it's about the other. How can they get more when they do what I need them to do? Is a bit of, putting yourself also in other people's shoes and trying to see what are their pains, and understanding, I understand that you're super busy. I understand that you have too many things to do, but we really need you to do this one more extra thing. And this is how this extra thing will help you also in your job. So a lot of emotional intelligence, which sometimes is difficult actually with all these Zoom and Teams and Meets virtual world, because you see the facial expressions if people put on the cameras, but you miss a lot of this human interaction. And I'm all about this human interaction, about the contact with people. So that virtual world has been a little bit of a challenge to be able to read and connect in more informal ways with people. But even though, even like this, again, this empathy and this reading of the other and the emotional intelligence, I think, plays a critical role.
Absolutely, 100%. I can only imagine the pressure and the stress. And I suppose at the start of the pandemic, was there a feeling of optimism that this could be, a vaccine could come along, or research could be given into it? Or how has that changed over the course of the whole pandemic?
Yeah, so I actually remember that when I moved to Canada, I was super optimistic. I was like, okay, I bet, I can bring my family to Canada, my mom, my partner's mom, my brother. Well, we can bring the family potentially in the spring or in July. When December, when I left Colombia, we were still not talking about the variants. We were just thinking the vaccines are advancing. There were some vaccines already that were starting to be, in the final phases of the trials. So the picture was pretty optimistic at the time in December. And then the variants came, and initially in the UK, and then everywhere in the planet started to take a very prominent role. And we basically, in my words, started a race or a competition between the variants and the vaccines. And we're getting some people vaccinated, and yet the virus is coming up with those new variants and new variants and new variants. So now, even though we're all tired and exhausted, and the last thing we want is to wear a mask or to stay at home, we all want to go and meet our friends, we all want to go and have dinner outside, have drinks or whatever, see a game, or gather into in concerts or places. I think we're still in a very delicate situation. We numbers are getting down a little bit in some countries, but we see that it's fluctuating and it's changing. And now we have the Delta variant, which is a variant that is more transmissible, but luckily none of the variants that we have so far, none of them are escaping the vaccine. So the vaccine is effective for all the variants we have right now. But we have the risk that potentially at one point we will have one new variant that will be, escaping the vaccine and will be able to infect severely people that are vaccinated. And that could be another turning point. And that could happen if the virus has the opportunity to continue to replicate. And that's why it's so important that all of us get vaccinated, because then the less people we have infected, the less opportunities this virus has to replicate, and the less opportunity we have to get more nasty variants.
And on that note, how frustrating is for you the anti-vaccine movement being?
Very frustrating. So I really try to educate and explain, and I give a lot of talks to help people that are hesitant, that maybe don't have enough information to understand the importance of the vaccine. And the vaccine is not to protect you only, it's to protect your family, it's to protect your close friends, is to protect the society, is to protect all of us. So vaccine is not an individual choice. Vaccines are social choices. And that's what a lot of people don't really understand. So I work a lot, again, giving talks and informing. The most frustrating for me is when I see, I actually, have even people close to me that are well educated, that are medical doctors, and that are convinced they will just survive and then get vaccinated. That for me goes beyond my understanding. That you as a doctor, understanding the public health implications, understanding the social implications, not just for you, but for the society, for your patients, for your family. So yeah, I think we need to be stronger in sending that message of not just being an individual choice, but being a social obligation.
Absolutely. And trust in science as well, which I think we have to get back to as people. I've just got, it's so exciting for me actually speaking to like a real expert on this. And the couple of questions I have are like, did you predict like a pandemic happening before it happened? I know a lot of people in the science world would have seen this coming a long time ago. And also, how do you think we move on from this post-COVID, or will it ever go away?
Yeah, so I'm not really a virologist, but I was, I always relate to that couple of TED Talks that were predicting somewhat and warning the planet about the virus, and just thinking it's not the nuclear weapons it's not another world war or another, just political challenge that we have is a biological challenge, and the biological challenge really is centered around virus that can spread so fast, like a respiratory virus, a SARS-CoV-2 that spreads so easily and infects so many people. So it has been a big lesson for, I think, all of us. And what we see now is that we will get to a point, I think, where we could potentially call COVID-19, instead of a pandemic, an endemic disease that is present, like influenza, is present everywhere. But then we have vaccines, we can control, we have some ways of controlling the spread and controlling the fact that people will not get severely affected and will not die in the big, numbers we have of people dying of COVID-19. So getting to an endemic situation where we have the virus, we learn to live with this virus, I think is what we almost hope for, because it's not going to be the day after the pandemic where COVID is gone, the virus disappears, and we're back to normal. I don't think that this is, there's no turning point here. We're where we are, and we hopefully will get to a point where we can control it and becomes endemic. Now, the challenge we have, and where Canada and many other countries are getting ready for, is for another future pandemic, because we had MERS, we have other viruses, we have Ebola, we have MERS, we have other viruses that have done their little struggles more localized, but they have the potential to become, to change and become global pandemics. So is that pandemic preparedness? I think we need to. Is basically our new normal, living with this virus and learning how to live with this virus.
And in the future question, Paul, you also made me think about, we hear a lot about people finding out about ancestry. Is there a danger to this or a benefit to this?
Oh, well, I myself, I have done all kinds of genetic testing. I myself, like a big guinea pig. All kinds. Some of them, companies call me and say, "Oh, do you want to do it?" I do it. I do whatever. So I have done a lot of them, and I would say great benefits from those. I learn about my ancestries with that. No big surprises. I'm from Colombia, so it shows that I have Latin American blood, and my family is coming from Spain, so it shows that. There are all kinds of stories on when people discover also family members that they maybe didn't know about, brothers or sisters that they didn't know about. That's not as pleasant. I actually have been contacted by people because there's this platforms. One of the tests I did is 23andMe, and they have a social platform for the people that have done the test, the ancestry test. And I have been contacted by people that are third or fourth cousins that I have no idea that are related to me. So it's quite funny. I find it entertaining. The other application that we have seen is becoming more and more prominent, and that is very interesting of these ancestry studies, is that they're using them to discover some important criminal, to unfold some of these criminal stories. Like there was a serial killer, I think the Golden Gate or some name of a serial killer in California that went and discovered for years and years and years. And it was basically through somebody from his family that they could link to this ancestry DNA database. And they discovered him because of he didn't do the test, but somebody in his family And because, of course, in every one of the criminal scenes, they took his blood, they had his fingerprint, the DNA code for that criminal. And when somebody from his family did the test, they could make the connections and discover that that was the criminal years after all this happened. So I think that's giving us these international databases, and the fact that there are millions of people now that are doing those tests. And these companies host in their databases millions of data points for all kinds of people around the world, are giving us also another dimension in terms of, like criminal investigation, or like for the people that have been adopted, that don't have a family history. Some of these companies also offer the opportunity to link you to family members, or to tell you about your health history, because in there you see you have these genes are make you more susceptible to certain diseases. That's normally what you see in your family when you say, oh yeah, I have 3 aunts that had breast cancer, or I had 2 people in my family that have Alzheimer's, or I have 2 people. So you know that because it's your family. And if you're adopted, you don't know that because you don't know about your family. With these genetic tests, you in some cases can get access to all that health history that is in your genes.
And then, Kata, what do you do with that? Because for my baby, I remember they said you can do a test even when I was pregnant. You can do a test and know all the possible illness that your son can have. And I was like, this is insane. This is so scary. I don't want to know. Like, what do I do with that information? That's probably the dark side. What do you do with that information?
Yes. Well, what we advise is to only, and what most of those companies are now focusing on is on the things that are actionable. So I just give you an example: breast cancer. Breast cancer, you can do mammography. See, if I have the gene of the breast cancer, or the variant that says I'm more susceptible to have breast cancer, I can start doing mammographies earlier. Instead of waiting, here the regulation says that you start mammographies when you're 50 in Canada. So maybe I can start when I'm 35, because I will monitor my breast, and I will monitor myself, and I will do mammographies. I can do things to prevent the cancer, or to detect the cancer early, because I know something in my genes make me more susceptible. On the other side, I don't see the purpose, and I don't see the benefit of me knowing that I have the gene for Alzheimer's, because then I will be depressed and there's nothing I can do. What would I do? Play Sudoku to try and keep my memory? Or, there's nothing, there's
exactly.
No medication, there's nothing I can do. So I will just it will make my life miserable. Now, there are other things, like if there are genes where you can carry in your body some mutations or some variants in your genes that you can transfer to your kids, but those genes don't make you sick. But if you have it and your partner has it, the two together can make potentially a kid sick. So in some cases, in some regions, like in Mediterranean region, for the alpha thalassemia, beta thalassemia, and some certain diseases that are very, very frequent, they are screening the couples when they get married for those genes to see if they have a risk to transfer those to their kids, because in fact, parents will be healthy, but the kid could be very, very sick. So in those cases where you could, detect very severe diseases early on, I think there is an action and there is a purpose. Otherwise, for now, there's some that, will not be a great benefit to know, because there's nothing we can do.
That's amazing. Catalina, you've been amazing with your time. I just have one more question, and this has been completely fascinating, but the podcast is called How to Be the Difference, and Joanna would kill me if I didn't ask you, how are you being the difference? And in your opinion, how can we all be the difference?
Well, I am different in many ways, and I sometimes joke calling myself L3. L3 for Latino. Of course, I'm originally from Colombia. You can hear my accent. Maybe, people are not seeing me, but sometimes I enter a room and people, because they see my face, they think, oh, she's Canadian or she's European, because I don't look very your typical prototype of Latino. But as soon as I open my mouth, it's like, oh, she's not from here. There's something, she has an accent. So the Latino, and then the lady, because I'm, of course, a woman, and so many challenges that come associated to woman in science. That's another difference. And the third L is the lesbian, which has been difficult for me to even publicly assume, but that L3 makes me unique, and I somewhat learn to embrace my difference and make that difference, instead of drag me down, empowering me to be the best potential Catalina I can be, and every day striving to do my best to show this L3 as, be proud of being who I am, and do my best in my job, do my best in my personal life, and do my best, as a human being.
Brilliant. And I would you be able to just, I suppose, is there any words you can say to women who are aspiring to be in science, and what way could you help them?
Yeah, there is lots of opportunities for women in science. It's not always easy. We actually created here in Canada a group that is called International Immigrant Women in Science, IWS. And in Colombia, I work very closely with Johanna on Mujeres TIC, Women TIC in Technology. And we are really working now a lot in supporting each other, in helping us open paths to get access to sometimes positions, opportunities. And we're seeing, step by step, we're seeing a shift. We're starting to see more role models, women getting the Nobel Prize, women leading big and large research initiatives. I think we are, as women, we can be absolutely brilliant scientists. Just sometimes we don't see ourselves in that role, and we kind of follow many of the stereotypes of where a woman should be, what are the careers for women. But I think there's great opportunities. We have made absolutely brilliant contributions to science. Not all of them are fully recognized. Like, for DNA, we have the example. We have Rosalind Franklin that discovered the DNA double helix structure. And actually the Nobel Prize that got awarded to Francis Crick and I forget the other one name, but the two men, one from the UK and one from the US, got the Nobel Prize when Rosalind Franklin was the one that discovered. So all to say that the brains and the potential is there, and now we're opening the path also for women to be recognized for the work we are doing.
Amazing. Thank you so much. This has been great. Having you in the podcast as a woman in science that is also a global leader and is creating a huge impact in the world. Thank you so much for inspiring us.
Thanks to you. Thank you to both of you, Johanna and Paul. Thank you so much.
And that was Catalina Lopez, a really impressive woman and really lovely chat. Paul, what are your highlights?
Oh, the whole thing. I actually wish we had more time, because at the end we started getting into more stuff. But she's had an incredible journey, and I thought it was really interesting, like straight from the get-go, that she seemed to study in everywhere situated around Ireland, like, but not actually studying in Ireland. But besides that, it was just super interesting to hear the thoughts of someone who was so highly regarded in her industry.
Absolutely. And it really makes you, I don't know about you, but I feel like full of hope that a lot of the diseases, we kind of have the talent to face them. People like Catalina and some other really brilliant people that are dedicating their lives to provide humanity with health, essentially.
and how everything is now down to the genes. We can even change our genes. That's pretty mad.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah. And our TED Talks, there's like, she spoke about changing the genes in trees to make them go straighter and produce more wood. So absolutely fascinating. And yeah, just on the talk about pandemics as well, it's like pandemics are always going to be around. There's thousands and thousands of different diseases in animals that we don't know yet. And humans are going to be always in contact. But thank God we have somebody like Catalina working for solutions to these problems. And
Absolutely.
Excellent. You can reach us at howtobetheDifference@theinterngroup.com or on social media @theinterngroup. And thank you very much, Johanna.
And thank you, Paul and Catalina. And yes. And thank you, Paul and Catalina. We really enjoyed
as well. Yes. Thanks to everyone listening. Best of luck.
Bye-bye.
Bye.